Say what you want about Hugh Freeze in the first 5 games of Auburn's season, but he had all the right answers on Monday.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're dapping it up. Darrell, Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend, hanging out with us as we react to Hugh Freeze's presser on Monday. He opens things up saying that Saturday hurt for everyone. But somehow, Darrell, the way he answered questions and the way he was pretty transparent with everything and explaining why things went the way they were and the calls were what they were, I don't know. It made me feel actually better about Saturday. I mean, it's okay. Like it still was a devastating loss, but it does seem like this staff is aware and has a handle on the direction of which the program is going.
Yeah. I think that you can be hurt in the moment and devastated and upset and frustrated, but still step back and do a bird's eye view of what's going on and say, okay, there are some things here to look at that show that there might be light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But Auburn is capable of turning this around quicker. So in the moment, you can be mad, you can be frustrated, you can be angry, you can feel like Hugh Freeze isn't getting it done right now. But it's okay to say there might be a little hope there that he's still the right man for the job. And the way he answered the questions is what did it for me. I think that he could not have answered them any better. They're truthful. Now, people say and people get mad, and you can't please people because it's one side or the other. Oh, when he answers that question, he's making excuses or he's throwing people under the bus. Well, okay, but what if it's the truth? What if it's factual? What if what he's saying, two things can be true at once? And I agree. It does suck. It is frustrating. Auburn should have won that game. He did make some poor coaching decisions. When he said, I should have given the ball to Jarquez more and punted or did this or did that, I should have he is reflecting and saying, okay, I'm learning too. You can't expect the kids you're coaching not to learn from their mistakes and not learn from your mistakes as a head coach. And I think he owned that. Now, people will say right out of the gate, Zach, I'm just telling you it's coming, when he talks about the roster he inherited, that it looks like that's making an excuse. Okay, maybe it is a bad look to place blame on previous coaching staffs and what you inherited. Because earlier you said you have a staff when you were hired in 2022, you said you had a staff that could turn things around rather quickly. So which is it? But he's right. Is anything he said unfactual with how barren this roster was when he inherited it?
No, I mean, it's not. No, what he said was true. Yeah. To answer your question, yes, that's true.
So is he to blame, or should he not say that? Should he dodge the question, or should he not come out with his opening statement and say,
I don't know if it's relevant right now. Like in a press conference where the design is to answer questions about, well, really the design is to preview Georgia, and that's not really what what happened, but to put a bow on Oklahoma, which I guess was the purpose of it. I don't know why you need that. The fact of the matter is you had every chance to go 5-0, and you did it. You did it. And to me, I think that's where the focus needs to be. And he highlighted that. He said, hey, we're close. All these losses were close. They had every chance to be 5-0. And, unfortunately, they've lost the 3 important games in that 5-game stretch. I just don't we all know when he took over, and I understand why he's saying that.
We don't. No, we don't. See, there's the point. And this is where I'm going to push back.
All right.
We all don't know. I know. Maybe some people that are being a little bit more level-headed know. And so the purpose of him saying that is, I know you're frustrated. I know it hurts. I know you're ready to jump ship, but patience. And here's why you need to exhibit patience when you feel your heart just got ripped out last Saturday. Because we're building something, having come from nothing, that's going to require you to stay on board, to stay engaged, to not jump ship, and to be patient. There's a faction of the fan base right now that don't want to hear that. Yeah, we all know. We know level-headed people, rational people know what roster he inherited, but there's some that don't care, and it doesn't matter. They just, and I get it. And I wrote something about this that'll drop later about the instant gratification of Auburn fans. It doesn't take away the sting.
I also think, though, the Auburn fan that, to your credit, doesn't know the situation he took over, they're not watching a press conference on a Monday. Like that, like they're not watching this, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But it gets reported. His sound bites hit out there and gets documented. People hear it and people see it.
But that wasn't the juicy part of the presser. I don't think that's what's going to get grabbed and thrown everywhere, because he had plenty of other more interesting things to say. That
I guess my point is, okay, you're making my point. This is great debate.
Okay, good.
You're right. That shouldn't be what's grabbed and is not juicy. But for some reason, there will be some that gravitate towards that and think that's the most important. They will pull that out and think that's the most important part, and will obsess and focus in on that part rather than the meat and potatoes.
And to your credit, later in the press conference, he was asked and I don't recognize the voice of the reporter, but he was asked, like, hey, you inherited a rough situation. Should Auburn fans have expected to go 5-0 or whatever? And then he's like, well, I'm not going to comment on what happened before me. And I'm like, you kind of did 20 minutes prior, but that's fine. That's fine. And then he said, of course, Auburn fans should expect a better record right now. I mean, he's owning it. And I did love he was pretty relaxed throughout this whole thing, which I do think is a little refreshing, where he was like, anytime I tell y'all and I'm honest on what happened on a play, y'all run with me throwing it under the bus, somebody under the bus, which I love that. I love that, the awareness, I guess, because I don't think a lot of head coaches have that level of awareness. I do think after the game, he overcorrected from the week before. And then on Monday in his presser, he just flat out said, like, I'm not throwing people under the bus. I'm answering your questions, which I thought was good.
I do too. Again, it goes back to, he's been a head coach for a long time, but he hasn't been Auburn's head coach. And maybe things are handled differently. I don't care if it's the SEC or not. Maybe the media and maybe things are handled differently in Oxford than they are Auburn. In professional sports, if you go to the podium as the manager of the New York Yankees as opposed to the Milwaukee Brewers, the media is different in different places. The media had its fangs out for the previous coaching staff in certain situations. And again, the fan base is not used to not having some fast turnaround. No matter what the era of college football since Pat died, Auburn's turned things quickly around.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've been bad this many years in a row.
1946 to 1950. It's there. I did some research. Again, that's something I wrote that'll drop later. But that's how long Auburn's gone with having 4 losing seasons in a row. And there have been some coaches that people considered the dark ages since then, right? The Doug Barfields, the 1946 to 1950.
Yeah, I mean, we typically, we've had these low lows, but we jump back pretty quickly, and that just hasn't happened.
And that goes to the roster thing. Let me just say this real quick because I want your opinion on this. This is relevant. It goes to inheriting rosters. Every Auburn coach before Hugh Freeze at some point inherited a roster that was sucky. Terry Bowden stopped recruiting. He was awful. And I guess he was terrible. That roster in 1998 was awful. And 2 years later, Tuberville had them in the SEC championship game. Yeah. Tuberville stopped recruiting. People thought he was going duck hunting, and Chizik had him winning a national championship 2 years later. See, that's what Auburn fans see. That's what they remember, and that's their expectation.
But also those teams, and I mean, I'm limited to what I can talk about here, but like the recent teams, like the Chizik team, well, one, he had Cam Newton, like that was a new player that helps. But I mean, that was a senior-led team. I mean, a lot of those guys had been on campus for a long time, and they just grew up and gelled together and got better as a team. Like, he inherited that. Like, he didn't
what about
that offensive line?
Great point. But in 2009, before he had Cam, he won 8 games in a bowl game in year one. Fair. What would we have taken to win 8 games in a bowl game last year in year one? And he inherited a really bad roster that Tubbs had basically quit on in 2012. Yeah. I mean, 2008. So, again, I'm not excusing. I'm just pointing out precedents and why there's certain mindsets of this is taking too long. It's year 4 when everyone else has done it in year 2 or year 1.
Yeah. It's also a different level of college football. I also think the job in the SEC is harder now than it used to be because of Bama and Georgia being the forces that they are. Nobody wants to have that conversation in Auburn circles, but that is true. Like, it is harder to win here. It's harder to recruit here because of the empires, the factories that have been set up in Tuscaloosa and Athens. What else did Hugh Freeze say? He pointed to playing the younger guys, which is something Lindsay and I talked a lot about this morning. I want to jump more into that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Darrell, can you imagine wagering anywhere than with our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook?
Couldn't imagine. It was interesting Saturday too, wasn't it? Man, did that change late. That was,
it did.
If you weren't paying attention to FanDuel, you would have been able to get in on that. So
yeah. And they almost nailed it. And then the pick six happened. Auburn, a 24.5-point dog at the time of us recording against Georgia with an over-under of 52.5. I wouldn't touch the line, but I would take the under on that if I had to pull the trigger on that right now. Hey, you can get started at FanDuel with a $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time's the best place to buy tickets. Darrell, Game Time really did you a solid last week with the Braves Mets game getting postponed to today. Are they playing that right now? I'm not sure.
Playing a doubleheader,
yeah. But hey, look, if you're a baseball fan, Game Time is going to be your. I mean, if you want to go to a playoff game over the next few weeks, Game Time is gonna be the best option for you there. So head over, download the free app. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Download Game Time today. Darrell, what time is it? What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Hugh Freeze, in his opening, I think it was in his opening statement, pointed out, if not, it was early in the presser. I mean, when he had a chance to talk about the fact of like how many young guys he was playing, he ran with it. He flat out said like, "Hey, Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons, they accounted for almost $150. DeMarcus Riddick led the team in tackles, and highlighted Malik Blockton and Caleb Harris and Jay Crawford, all of these freshmen." And he's like, "We're playing a bunch of them. Like half the guys that we're playing are young guys, and you best believe we're using that in our recruiting pitch," which we've speculated. And the fact that he came out and said it's a little refreshing.
Yeah, even he mentioned what they were doing and how it changes the fabric of their team and some of the things that they could work on. I thought it was very interesting because I thought it from the press box. I loved how he highlighted Malcolm Simmons and how he's playing and how in high school he was used to just bouncing that outside and scoring. And if he puts his foot in the ground 2 or 3 times, including getting to the one as opposed to scoring by cutting that inside, he'll learn from that.
There was one early. It might have been one of the first few plays of the game where it's like he kept going outside. It's like you had 6 yards right in front of you.
Yes.
And so that's just a
you'll learn.
Thing.
He'll learn that because, like I said, in Alex City, he was used to taking that to the house, going from the outside. I think that the only way to learn is to play, to see what has to happen on the field, and that's where I'm cautiously optimistic.
Me too.
Put it that way.
Me too. When you say when he talks about being close, how this team is close. Which we didn't really put a bow on this last segment. Are you okay with him saying that? Because it's so easy to grab that and say, well, that's such an easy thing to say. You've lost your 3 only games that matter so far this year. Are you okay with him saying that? Yeah,
because I feel that way too. I feel like clean up the self. Shooting yourselves in the foot stuff, which is bad. It's execution, but clean that up. And you look at all these other indicators, and Auburn's, out. He talked about the stats, but they're out gaining people. They're running the ball effectively. They've got big shots down the field, things we've not seen for a while. So score from the one, make a 27-yard field goal. Don't have 5 turnovers. Get off the field on 3rd down. When that finally happens, when those things finally go away and it clicks, and Auburn starts to do things that they're supposed to do that they're game planning for, well, that's why you could say you're close. But here's what's going to happen, unfortunately. I think Auburn's going to be a much better football team in November than they are right now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they may have dug themselves such a hole that they may win 3 or 4 games and look good doing it. And people are going, where's this been? They're clicking. And it's going to be a little too late then because of the hole they've put themselves in. But also don't underestimate going on the road.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, because the way the schedule shapes out, you could totally see this team beat Vandy, beat ULM, and look good and get their biggest win of the season when they host A&M. And then people be like, where was this?
And they're 5-7 with that. You see what I'm saying? That's and you go, if they'd have just done what they were supposed to do early. But I think too, because of that whole dynamic and how you're playing later in the year, and if you start to put things together, and you're playing the road, maybe, just maybe, Zach, starting out with 5 home games put a lot of pressure on this team. You know it, and I know it. We all kept saying, you better do this, you better do that, you better come out 4-1. And then you're also playing teams you should beat. Yes. Now you're going on the road, away from the pressure and distractions and some of the boo birds, and you're playing teams that you're supposed to get hammered by. Who knows? Maybe it lightens the load. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you can win one of those 3, I mean, obviously Georgia, I mean, that changes everything. I'm not expecting that, but Missouri or Kentucky on the road, that'd be great. That'd be great. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on X, Dap6410, Instagram, Darrell Dap, and then Wednesdays, Fridays, and the reaction show, and then in the barn, thebarnauburn.com, writing some stuff there.
Yep, be sure to check it out. You can find my stuff at thebarnauburn.com as well. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.